New Jersey schools will require in-person instruction, and they have to follow CDC guidelines and a bunch of guidelines that Governor Phil Murphy put forward. But really, it's up to the districts to decide how they enact on those guidelines. Now, there's a bunch of restrictions that will have to be put in place, but mainly in the name of social distancing and also good hygiene. So students who cannot stay 6 feet apart will have to wear a mask. So for the most part, they're going to try to space out students inside schools. But if they do things like ride a school bus where they're going to be a little bit more cramped, they will have to wear a mask. That's going to prove a little difficult for some parents, especially because kids typically to this point haven't had to legally wear a mask. So that's a little bit of concern for some people going forward. There's other things like recess and PE. That's going to happen, but on stagnated schedules, and also stuff like indoor sports or locker rooms may remain closed because of to stem the spread of the coronavirus. Mealtime will still happen, and a lot of students do require those free meals, but there won't be buffet style meals and there won't be family style meals. It's going to be more of a grab and go situation. Overall, the indoor classrooms will need to have ventilation, and they're going to need to have hand washing stations as well as other hygiene products, like they'll have masks on hand and they'll have hand sanitizer. But going forward, yes, it's going to be a very different socially distant experience, and because in-person instruction is required, it's probably going to mean that a lot of schools are going to have to stagnate how many kids are allowed in the school at one time.
You laid out some of those restrictions within the schools, but what kinds of plans as far as reopening and otherwise are districts considering right now?
So I've seen three main plans. One of them, which is really popular, has been called the AB plan, which just really splits the school in half between having students attend school on one day and then having them do Zoom or Google Hangouts on the other day. So the ones I've seen have been, like, I'm at a high school right now, Secaucus High School. They might do something like have 9th and 10th graders in on Mondays, and then on Tuesdays it'll be 11th and 12th graders. That does pose an interesting dilemma for parents who have maybe multiple students within one school. So there is also other schools who are proposing doing things based on last name, so at least families can go to school together. There's also another plan I saw that was a 6-day rotating schedule. So it would be 3 groups of students each divided between that 6 days. So each kid would go to school every 3 days, depending on their group, and they would do online learning for the rest of those days. So a lot of plans are being floated, and again, it's up to the district to decide, but they should announce those individual district plans in August or September. But for the most part, school districts aren't surprised by the restrictions. They're really in line with what we're hearing from the CDC to try to keep people healthy.
Michelle, obviously huge impacts on parents, whether they have to go to work, find childcare, whether they have to stay at home. What are some of the concerns that parents have so far about the plans that have been floated?
Well, this stagnated schedule really does pose an interesting dilemma. I mean, the work week goes on Monday through Friday, no matter what. So if you have students who are going into school on Monday and then at home on Tuesday, it's kind of hard to find an employer that's flexible with that schedule. In addition, a lot of these schedules, they won't even be the same days every week. Some I've seen have been like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday alternating, Thursday, Friday for the other group. So you really have to find an employer that's going to be flexible on that. On top of this, with spikes all across the country, there's still health concerns about the coronavirus and the lack of a vaccine. And parents are saying, will these kids even wear a mask for that long? I know that they aren't requiring them if they're 6 feet apart, but there are a lot of social situations in schools. I'm sure kids want to play around, and it's going to be hard to really enforce that mask rule. But I do get that there is going to have to be some sort of plan to return these kids to some sort of normalcy, and it is important just to have a social structure around you. I mean, everyone grew up going to school. This is such a new scenario for everyone that everyone's just trying to work through the kinks.
Yeah, such unnatural learned behavior, I think, for a lot of these kids, Michelle. So how similar or different is New Jersey's response to other states around the country?
I think you're going to see a lot of similar things around the country. New York City hasn't announced their plans yet. Cuomo said he was going to issue some guidelines in June, but that never came about. So I think they're still holding on a wait and see approach. In Connecticut, however, they're pushing for a 5-day-a-week instruction. But that 5-day-a-week instruction requires students to wear a mask the entire time, which is pretty much impossible when you have K through 12th graders in schools. I don't think right now, usually around 9 years old is when they start requiring masks, but they're going to have to require everyone to wear a mask. They said that faculty will not return if students don't wear masks. They're going to do something called cohorting, which means that you're going to be stuck with the same group of kids. So at least if someone does get sick, it's easier to isolate and contact trace. But they're going to go to school every day of that week. Now, whether parents will agree with that because of the concerns around still remains to be seen, but that schedule is what it looks like if everyone returns at this time.
And Michelle, another thing that a lot of people have been asking for is in-person graduations. We know New York just allowed some this past weekend. Do you have any sense if larger commencements will be allowed going forward?
There is a petition here in New Jersey to allow 500 or more, 500 people at a graduation. I know that New York started theirs on June 26th for 150 people or less. But already in Westchester, there was a case of a student who returned from Florida to go to their graduation, turned out to be COVID-19 positive, and now everyone at that graduation is now quarantined. So as you expand things, there's a bigger risk just because people are coming from all around. I do get that graduation is an important part of our life. We did a graduation special just not too long ago here on Cheddar, but it's really important for a lot of people, especially people who are first generation graduates across the board for their families. But the thing is, as you expand, it does put people at risk. And so it's still a very tenuous time. The tri-state area has got the coronavirus really under control. But the idea that, elsewhere in the country, there's still spikes, and it just takes one traveler from outside to really bring that virus back into the community. And we have to start from square one again.
Yeah.